Are you ready to become an escapreneur? Well, you are in the right place. Welcome to the Bye Bye 9 to 5 podcast, designed by brilliant women, especially for brilliant women who want to create the life of their dreams by escaping the 9 to 5.
Welcome to Bye Bye 9 to 5 podcast, where we are helping women to escape the 9 to 5 and build the business of their dreams so they can live the life they desire on their own terms. I have an amazing guest here today that's going to definitely show you how to be able to do some of that. Her name is Vanessa Newport. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So let me give you a little background about Vanessa. This is the brief version, but she's going to really give us the skinny on all of this, the juiciness. So Vanessa is a master manifestor. Don't miss that. Oh, I love it because I have to talk about that later. I'm horrible with manifestation, but she's a master manifestor. She is a mom, a wife, an entrepreneur, an author, speaker, and Midlife Makeover Coach. I'm sorry, I said mild life. Midlife. Oh, my tongue today. Midlife Makeover.
I hope people have more than just a mild life. So that's kind of why I'm in business. So
yes, I wish we all had a mild life. and she owns and operates Vanessa Newport Coaching. Vanessa has taken her own experiences and the expertise of actually being in a midlife crisis to help others to navigate that process. So Vanessa works with her clients to help them transform their thoughts, their feelings, and behaviors. That's very important about their entire existence. And she is fully committed to helping them down the path of making their second half better than their first.
Absolutely.
And I love that because sometimes we think when we are going through this first half of the journey that's it for us. We're too old. We've gotten to a place where it's just over. So she'll tell us all about that. But first of all, Vanessa, if you will give us really a good background of how you got started in all of this, as a coach, what has been your experiences in your midlife? If you give us some information about that, we want to know the skinny.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take you kind of way back because I can't really get you to the middle of my life until you kind of understand the background, because it all comes into play, in terms of how I decided to start doing what I'm doing. So, I was raised in kind of your typical household, which to me means dysfunctional. So if there's anybody out there who, thinks they weren't raised in like a normal household, whatever that means, we all have things that happen in our lives that we think are so bizarre compared to other people. So, it was very kind of challenging. So I moved out when I was 17. I moved 12 times the first year that I moved out of my house. I was couch surfing, living in unfinished basements with concrete walls and spiders and all of those things. I was still going to high school, but I finished high school early. My focus, because of my home situation, was, hey, I need to get out of here. I need to figure out how to get on with my life. So when I worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. One of those was a human resources assistant. This is how I got my first start in HR, really. And then I worked for a hotel in the late afternoons into the evening, working kind of in banquet hosting, setting up for all those fancy parties. And then I did a paper route in the middle of the night. So I was really only sleeping like 3 to 4 hours a day. And then somehow I managed to have time to have a brief relationship. I got pregnant when I was 19. And I was like, oh man, what have I gotten myself into? I was like working 3 jobs, and now all of a sudden here I had, this baby. And I didn't find out until I was like 3 months pregnant. So I only had 6 months notice to try to like figure out how I was going to make this work. So Obviously I couldn't work 3 jobs anymore. So I started just focusing on the one that had the best career path, which was the human resources job. And I became a 100% of the time single mom. I had no help from dad. Luckily I was able to build a really strong relationship with my son's dad's family throughout the years. But in terms of help from the dad, it was just non-existent. So after I had my son, I knew I had to figure things out for my life. I didn't want to fall into the story of being, the single mom and all the statistics of not, kind of living off the system or those types of things. So, at that point in time, my son was just a few months old, and I lived in a double wide trailer, sitting on like the green shag carpet, wood paneling walls that were mirrored, and the dingy light. And I was like, man, I cannot imagine myself being here in this place in 10 years from now. I have to figure out how to get out of these circumstances and out of this energy for myself and my son. So I kind of had what you've probably heard referred to as like a come to Jesus meeting. With like, what are you going to do, girl? You got to figure this out.
Right.
And my mom had since divorced, remarried, and then moved away to a different state. And I was an only child, so I didn't have a support system. And I had my grandparents who lived around the corner from me, but they were older, they were elderly. They couldn't really help a whole lot. So I had this come to Jesus meeting and I buckled down. And I was never unemployed. I've actually never been unemployed since I was 17 years old. Every single day of my life, I've been employed in a full-time role. Nice. So I put myself through college, and I got a bachelor's degree. It took me 9 years. And over that 15 years, I worked my way up the corporate ladder in HR. And everything was pretty great with my career. For the most part, I was pretty happy with where I was at. But I kind of felt like, I always had these golden handcuffs. Like I kept saying, I just remember saying, man, if I could just get to $30,000 a year, I won't ask for anything more. If I could just get to $35,000, and then it was 40, and then it was 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85. And it just kept going. And I was like making more money, but I wasn't like happier. Right. And I was able to, acquire more things in life. Like, I was able to buy a condo in my 20s and things that I had just never imagined would happen when I was the single mom sitting on the floor of a double wide trailer. Right. So, then one day in my corporate career, I had been working at this particular company for about 8 years, had gotten really, had a lot of respect from my peers, from the company. I had a very visible role in human resources, and employee benefits and wellness was my niche. I was winning a lot of awards for the company. I had people calling me, just out the wazoo asking me, what are you doing for your best practices for these benefits and wellness? We want to copy what you're doing. And so I had a lot of momentum. I was really enjoying what I was doing. And then I had a breaking point at a meeting that occurred with all of my peers. And the CEO basically threw me under the bus in front of all of my peers. Is kind of the short story. And of course, I knew all of the background of the situation, but I couldn't say that in the meeting. And it was all I could do in that moment to not walk out. And I'd never walked out of anything in my entire life. But it was a breaking point at my career where I was like, wow, I am really out of integrity. I am working for a company that no longer respects me in the way that I need to be respected. Mm-hmm. And mind you, all of this time I was having a great time in my career. My paradigms were like, just keep working harder and you'll get rewarded. Work harder, right? And my whole focus was around taking care of my kid. And so that's why I kind of focused on the money and the things, and I was just terribly unhappy, and my health took a really bad hit. Actually, I've had 3 major medical crises, but up till this point in the story, there were 2 that had hit. And I said, you know what? I've got to figure something else out because I'm just going to die. Like my body can't handle the stress. And so within 2 weeks of that whole situation that I just described, I had a new job, and I just thought, I need to wipe the slate clean here and figure things out. So that was 4.5 years ago. And the first year after that, I basically did nothing. I was broken, totally broken, laid on the couch, felt sorry for myself, was sad. And then it started to really bother me that I was like, I'm doing well at my new job, but I'm not doing anything that fills my cup up. So that's when I started going through the process of thinking like, who am I? What's my purpose? What do I want to do? Do I want the whole rest of my life to look like the first 40 years? And the answer to me was no. And so I just sort of started shifting slowly into trying to figure out what that was. And through that process, which by the way had to do a lot with like getting quiet with my own mind and stopping the nagging, annoying voices that are in our heads telling us all of our stories. And that the epiphany to me was, I've always had, despite all of this stuff in my background, I've had tremendous success. If I'm honest with myself, I am going to pat myself on the back and say, you know what, girl, you have done a good job despite all of this stuff. And so that was my purpose, was helping other women figure out how to move through these things also, and help them come to the discovery that, that all of these things are just part of the journey of getting us where we want to go. So these days I still have my corporate job. I enjoy it. I like the people I work with, and I'm able to do a women's coaching business at night and on the weekends. And I don't know what the future holds. But right now I'm able to manage both. I don't have any small children anymore. My son's grown up. He's 21. So that's kind of like brought me where we are today.
That's a wonderful, wonderful story, Vanessa. Just so many things that you said in there. What really surprised me in your story is your ability to have such good, like, self-awareness at such a young age. Oh my gosh, just to be able to be young and sit in your environment and say, this is not the environment I want for myself. So that's a huge nugget for women that are listening, no matter the age.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you that was such great insight. And I guess before you even knew what mindset really was, you were catering to your mindset yourself. You were coaching yourself.
I was doing the things, even though I didn't know what those things were. I mean, part of what I teach women is to learn to observe themselves, kind of go, I call it, like, it's an NLP term, but it's like going meta on yourself, right? Where you're observing everything you're doing, being, seeing, feeling, from almost as though you're like a third party. And you can reflect back, do I like what I'm seeing, what I'm doing in the environment that I'm in? I kind of like to describe it like you're your very own guardian angel, if you'll allow yourself to see yourself through that way. And that's how you can gain so much insight. And I was doing this, and I don't know exactly where it's from, but I think people who are raised in kind of traumatic environments, I believe that we develop this skill because it's a coping mechanism of like, how do I get through this situation? So sometimes I think what I've seen with people who have endured, trauma or difficult situations is that they can develop that skill because it allows them to move through the place that they've been in.
That's nice. Yes, that's very nice. Yeah. It's amazing. That's an amazing story, because I can't get over how much you coached yourself through different parts of that experience. Amazing. So that is kind of what has brought you here today. Another thing that you said that was really interesting is the fact that you are still working your 9 to 5 and doing this business on the side, which is another nugget for ladies. You can have it all. You can continue working your job and have your business and enjoy them both, balance them both, and work through them both. Is it a particular balancing act or skill that you have to have, Vanessa, to be able to do both of those things?
Well, I don't really believe in balancing. That used to be a really popular term in the HR world. It probably still is, this whole concept of work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's like, I'm an energy person, so I'm always want to like step into the feeling of what that feels like, right? And if you step into the feeling of what balancing feels like, you're just a hot mess all the time, right? Imagine yourself walking a tightrope across the Grand Canyon with a pole, trying to balance, like you're surrounded by fear. You're surrounded by, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to die here. There's a pretty good chance I can't balance, right? So already I think the concept of women having to balance can make them feel like they can't do it. Right. But for me, it's more like, in this moment, here's what I need to be focused on. And sometimes we get overwhelmed because we have this and we have this and we have this and this and this. Let's get it small here. In this moment, what's the most important thing that I need to be doing? What do I need to be in the moment of and get present on it? And so that helps you kind of balance at a macro level, but you have to be able to focus on what's the most important thing at hand. You know, there's a lot of regrets I have, being a single mom, raising my son, and my focus was on work and, still doing all the things. Like there was still soccer practice, and there was still dinner that had to get made. And there was, he had a learning disability. So homework time was especially hard. I had animals. There's all the things that go on. And sometimes I wasn't so good at focusing at the present moment of what was really important in that place and time. So that's another nugget too for your audience, which is just, the concept of balancing, maybe shift what you think balancing needs to look or feel like. Just get present in the moment.
I love that. I've never heard anyone quite put that way, because I still use that term, balancing. So now you've given me a shift, although, yeah, you have really here. Although I have been more present, I do more of what you just described in my daily walk, because I can't worry or even think, not necessarily worry, but think about what's happening tomorrow or the next day or the next day. I always have to redirect myself and say, let's stay present on today so I can get these set of tasks done. And instead of running around like a chicken with my head cut off, thinking about all these other things, let me just stay present and get these things done so that I can provide myself with some self-care and self-love at some point during the day and be able to relax. Because I'm huge on self-love and self-care.
Right.
But it is when I don't, when I'm not able to stay present, and I keep calling it balancing, but thank you for enlightening us on that. That's a huge nugget for women.
Yeah. And I don't think I think that it's fine to keep using the word balancing, because that's what the audience relates to. That's the term in our culture about balance, and especially, women having all of this pressure for balance. And so, obviously that's the language that we relate to. So I think it's important to keep that up, but just, when you think of that word, what is that, energetic feeling that you have? And for me, when I was identifying with that, I was just always at a place of, anxiety, because it just feels like there's no way I can be successful at this. And that's obviously not a good energetic place for anyone who wants to try to make a change in their life, or just
Right.
cope with day-to-day life. That use of that energy is not going to be effective.
That's a huge point. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a mindset shift, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, that's so, a lot of what you are doing with your clients, and let me tell you, audience, you're in for a treat, because Vanessa is like super smart. Vanessa's got she's got more certifications. Oh my God, if I was an octopus with arms, I wouldn't be able to count them all. She's got more certifications in just like things like mindfulness, which I love, love, love. If I had time to be certified in anything, that's one thing I would. Cognitive behavior, EFT, NLP. Tell us all about these certifications and how you use them with your clients.
Yeah. So I have a lot of certifications that are kind of, I would say, Western based, like pen to paper. So I have certifications that are based in, human resources and, employee benefits, professional stuff, which, are kind of, I would say, on the more practical side based on our culture, if you would say that. And then I swung, the other direction, and I started to get really interested and involved in these communities around kind of energy medicine and all the stuff we can't see, right? Because for what we can see as humans, we can only actually see 25% of what's going on. We're using our senses, our seeing, our tasting, our smelling, our hearing, our touching. Those are the senses that we're making decisions based off of. But just like the microwave works and our cell phones work, but we can't see it. We know gravity works because our feet are mostly on the ground most of the time, right?
Yes.
So we know there's all of these other like mathematical things that are happening in the universe that we can't see. And we've been taught, don't believe what you can't see. Well, 75% of what's going on in the universe, you can't see. And so I started to get really interested in this, which is how I started evolving kind of spiritually, because I'll tell you, a major gap in most of my life leading up to that point was a lack of spiritual connection. And not even talking religion here, just a spiritual connection. Like, how do I fit in with with nature and the universe, right? So I started researching and doing all kinds of just self-education, because I found myself in such a place where I went from not wanting to learn, because I created the story of I just need to say no to everyone because I'm overwhelmed. So I don't have time for you. I don't have time for friends. I don't have time to read. I can't learn a new thing. Okay. So I just had blocked myself out from this whole like universal knowledge. And then when I made the shift, now that's why I started like reading every single book I could. I started just diving into all these certifications, and so all of those different things, and it's everything over here to like, I'm a Reiki master, so that's dealing with kind of the energy systems that flow through the body. And then some of these other like thought field therapy, which is the founding body of knowledge that most people know, EFT or emotional freedom technique. TFT is kind of the foundation of where that came from. And so I started just really understanding how the energy works in the body and how much control we have over it. And, we go through life thinking, I don't have control over that. I don't have control. And it's true, I think, in the whole scheme of the world, we don't have control, right? But we can direct it and we can change how our cells and the vibration in our bodies just by what we're thinking. We can make ourselves sicker. A whole different show about how I made myself sicker with the thoughts in my head, right? So that's why it came to be. So when I coach my students, my program is mostly virtual based, kind of a student center, access the training at your own pace type of thing. But the group coaching calls that we have is an opportunity for hot seats, where someone can just say, hey, I'm really stuck here. Help me move through it. And so I just kind of, like you said, it's like an octopus. I just kind of integrated all of that information in my head. And so I wouldn't say I'm like a down the line practitioner of like book NLP stuff or book mindfulness stuff. It's just a mishmash of my own personal experience, my own personal coaching, all of the stuff that I've learned. And in the moment, I'm able to coach people through pulling in different elements to think about things differently, reframe things differently, and start moving forward just in that kind of microcosm of what's happening in the moment.
Very nice. I like that. And what happens with your students when they are exposed to this? I mean, does it change their mindset? Does it raise their energy level? I mean, what is happening with your students when you're doing this?
Yeah, I think obviously it depends on the students, right? My ideal student is someone that has some level of awareness about their stuff and their situation, because the whole premise of what I teach basically is you're responsible largely for how you're moving through life. We all have these circumstances and things where, we really can't control them. Our parents got divorced, or we got divorced, or, there was some type of tragedy that happened. Those things are going to happen. So, but like you said, I was able to start coaching myself at a very young age. So throughout life, I just continued that practice. When I have coaching students who come in and they know they want to make a change, but they haven't had a history of 20 or 30, 35 years of self-coaching themselves,
right?
They're going to be at a different starting place than someone else who's like, yeah, I know what all my crap is. I know I've been creating problems for myself. I know I've been keeping myself stuck. I'm still stuck, but I'm open to hearing how to frame things differently, to move to a different level. Those two coaching students are going to have completely different outcomes, because this person, who didn't have the awareness, their goal is just going to be having some awareness about what's going on in their lives and how they can start to influence it and take the steps toward changing it. Whereas this person may have a shorter time frame to get up to speed with starting to change mindsets. Like, yep, I get it. I see how this wasn't serving me. I see how I can shift it. Just tell me all the things to do so I can manifest this future that I want. But, like you said, you're a terrible manifestor. You said that at the beginning. Yeah. I don't believe that. I believe that we're all wonderful manifestors, but because this law of manifestation is happening, regardless of whether or not we're aware of it. You could go through life not knowing anything about manifestation and you're still manifesting things, right? It's based on our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors. So look at the power of that when you actually know how to turn that on, to actually be very deliberate in what you want to manifest, instead of, like in my book, I talk about, if you're going down the river in a boat, the river's just going to take you where the river's going to take you, and you come to a fork in the river, and wherever the strongest current is, so like, the thing that's screaming the loudest, the rush of the water is going to just take you down that channel. Whereas if you had an oar and you were using rocks to push off of because you wanted to take a hard left or a hard right, then that's my kind of analogy of manifesting what you want. There's this stuff that's happening, but you also have the will. I'm not talking about willpower, but you have the will to move it in a certain direction that you want.
That's very nice. Now, yeah, I did say that when we started, and I tease about that, and I don't want my audience to get that wrong because that sounded very negative. I know it sounded so negative.
You just wish to desire more.
I wish to desire more, and I actually have that. You know, I can only fit so much things in during a calendar year that I'm going to focus on for personal development. But I do have that as a part of my personal development for the beginning of 2019, because I think I will be at a place where I can really sit and focus to be able to understand manifesting in a way that I can activate it in my life. Because I do believe, just like Vanessa said, it's something that's happening anyway. And when it happens, we think of, oh, how lucky am I, or something. Yeah, but it is happening anyway, and you're contributing to it in a, maybe not in a deliberate way, but that is on my agenda for 2019. So who knows, Vanessa?
Wonderful.
We may end up working together in that area.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So so you have a Facebook group, and they're called the Midlife Makeover Manifestors. Tell us a little bit more about that group.
Yeah, so this is a community group. It is closed, just so we have, we don't have every single person in the universe try to get in there and not really be in alignment with the purpose of the group. But yeah, it's for any person really who wants to make their second half their better half. And so it's a place where, right now I obviously guide the conversation. I put kind of thought-provoking posts out there, put some stories out there that might get people to start thinking differently about things. And really it's a place for all of us to contribute about things that we've learned in their life. So the intention is not for it to be this is just Vanessa, saying everything she knows about everything and everyone gets tired. I don't want people to get tired of talking, or hearing from me in that group. I want it to be a collaboration. That's the whole point. So, I would love for other people to come into the group and be active participants and just say, hey, I noticed it when I was stuck in this point in my life. Here's something that was really helpful. Or someone to raise their hand to say, hey, I'm really stuck with this topic right now. I'm feeling really unfulfilled in my career, or geez, I think my relationship is falling apart and I just need a support system right now. So it's really for us to bring those things together, and I think one of the things too is when we hear, especially, women who are in midlife, and there isn't really a hard and fast age range for that, by the way. We probably should have said that at the beginning, but I felt like I was having a midlife crisis in my late 20s. That's when I first identified with that word. And then there's women I talk to are in their 50s and 60s, and they're like, I'm in a midlife crisis. So it's not age based. It's just mostly when you come to this conclusion when you're like, wow, things are really not going how I want. And so that's just kind of culturally what we call it. And people have a visceral reaction, when they hear those words. But yeah, I think I would just like it to be kind of a global platform for us to come together and just say, here's how I can help this community, and here's where I need help from this community. And so the intention is, hopefully at some point, I hope to always contribute to it, but I'm starting this platform, as a place of community, not a place where, Vanessa's just inserting all of her opinions all the time, because there's lots of wonderful people who have experienced great things that they can contribute. And also when we hear about the word makeover, a lot of times we think about, oh, is this going to be a place where I'm going to learn about like a new hairstyle that's going to be great for me, or new skincare, like how do I keep looking young? But I think, culturally we have put so much emphasis on how we look on the outside that we don't pay attention to our insides. and we're chasing, we're chasing pictures of models who are photoshopped with like their computer made bodies. And we are somehow then shaming ourselves for having real bodies and things like that. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to take care of yourself on the outside. I think it's a symbiotic relationship of how you look on the outside helps you feel a certain way on the inside. But if your inside is falling apart, it's just not going to work. So my whole foundation is, let's get your inside in the right vibration and working for you. And then you decide what the outside wants to look like, because you know what? You may very well figure out that some of the things that you cared about before, you don't care about so much.
Yeah.
Maybe you just are like, you know what? Why have I been dyeing my hair this whole time? I have a beautiful natural hair color. I was just trying to keep up with what all the commercials told me I was going to do, and I do my fair share of things to feel and look the way that I want to do too. But I have shifted where it's for me. It's not because I'm trying to keep up with social statuses.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that, Vanessa. And I know a lot of women are thinking, what does this really have to do with business? But this is all connected to that, because a lot of times we're sitting in corporate jobs and we are just going through the motion and not even recognizing that you're having a midlife crisis and you need a makeover. And so it does have to do with business, because it allows you to see that you can change your life. You can do something a little more suited to your purpose and passion. But first of all, you need to work on you, recognize that you're having a midlife crisis, and actually go through a mindset change. And that's where a person like Vanessa comes in, and she's able to help you with that. Now, Vanessa has an amazing, amazing resource, which is her book that's called Conquering Your Funk. And so I didn't get to read a whole lot of this book, but I read some of the first few pages. And what intrigued me was she talked about, why you're in a funk. That's one of the portions of the book that she talked about. And so, Vanessa, if you could spend a few minutes elaborating on that for us, because this is what happens. Sometimes I get in a funk, even though I feel like I'm in a higher energy vibration, like you talked about, at a higher energy vibration now that I've been in a long time. But sometimes every now and then I get in a funk. Can you explain to us, based on your book, Conquering Your Funk, why do we get there and how do we get out of that thing?
Yeah. So what you said leading up to this makes total sense, and it relates perfectly to my book. And that was, sometimes we're in our corporate jobs and we're having all this personal stuff going on and we think it's completely separate, right? And so my book goes through, it's very personal. Like if you like reading people's diaries and like all their junk, and this is a book you have to read, because some of my friends were like, really? You're gonna, that's embarrassing. Why would you put it in there? And I said, no, people have to learn that other people feel and think this way, right? So that's what the book is, hey, here's what I was going through personally, and here's how it was affecting me personally. And guess what? Here's how it showed up at work and not serving me very well. I mean, I had a great corporate career, but near the end of when I say like I was kind of like devolving, just the stress, it was like I was at the bottom of this mountain and all the rocks were falling on me, right? It was like I was causing a lot of that because I wasn't dealing with my personal stuff. So all the frustration and the resentment and the stuff I hadn't dealt with when I was a kid, and I was tired and, feel sorry for myself because all these things, that was the mindset that eventually showed up in my corporate career. And there's so many of us, like, I have so much compassion for people now who I work with in corporate, because if their behavior starts showing up weird in the workplace, or they're defensive, or they're not happy, like they have some stuff going on personally that they're not dealing with, that they haven't dealt with. And it's making them respond to the world in a way that is not productive. But sometimes they can't see it because, number one, it's a pattern of behavior. That's their vibrational norm, is to be negative, is to be upset, to be, unhappy that they're there, fill in the blank. And so that's why I wrote this book, was like, hey, yeah, you have your stuff, but your stuff shows up at work. So it's Conquering Your Funk, a guide to leading with your brilliance and banishing your BS in life and work. Because what I came to realize was a lot of this, we're all going to have circumstances, but I was creating a lot of my own BS because of the stories I had around things, right? So everyone has this different level of funk. And this book is really for, the person. I mean, I've had friends who don't consider themselves in a funk at all. And they read the book and they said, I've got so much value out of that. Just as good, like life reminders of like getting back to the basics of, oh, this makes total sense. Why am I not doing that? So people who don't have any funk to people who are in marginal funk, where they just kind of feel like down in the dumps and they can't seem to get their wheels spinning. This gives tools and resources of kind of how to like reconnect with your brilliance, because so much of the time we focus on all the stuff we're not good at, especially in our careers, right? That's why we have this, what's that called? Imposter syndrome, where like you've been doing the thing for 10 or 15 years, but you still come home at the end of the night feeling like a failure, like you're not doing the thing. And I'm like, no, the evidence is you've been doing the thing. No one expects you to have the whole path mapped out. You're doing a great job. So sometimes we just need to get reconnected with our brilliance and not beat ourselves up for the things that we're not good at. And by the way, if you don't think you're good at something, is that really your belief system? Or did somebody else somewhere along your path tell you that was your belief system and you bought into it? Because there's a lot of people who go through life saying, I'm not good at that. I can't do that. Blah, blah, blah. Is that your story? Where did that story come from? Because have you ever tried it? Or or someone just want to keep you small at some point in your life and you bought into it? So there's the shift, right? And then from my perspective, my funk went way deep, far, wide. And I help people identify kind of the continuum of, even before I was born, what were the circumstances that influenced my parents? Because those are the paradigms that I was born and raised into.
Right.
And so that's where we start these family stories of like, oh, well, money doesn't grow on trees, so therefore I'm going to go through life thinking money is really hard to get.
Yes. That
I have to work really, 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 really hard to make a good living to care for my family. So we start these types of stories that aren't even truth, right? So I have a process. And so my personal funk went deep and wide. So my process in the book helps you start unpacking it. And, the book obviously is kind of a high level, get you started on your way type of thing, but you can do a whole life's work unpacking this and letting it actually propel you into a place of freedom instead of a place of prison.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yes. And you have a virtual book club that goes along with that as well.
Yeah, so I haven't quite launched that yet, but in an effort to support people who want to go through the book and understand, the concepts here, one of the things I will be rolling out very soon within the next month will be a virtual book club. And so it'll be kind of daily prompts, and it will be a reading assignment effectively. So this week, today, go through this reading assignment and work on XYZ worksheets in the book. So along with the book, there's a toolkit that's located in the back, but then I also have worksheets that if you download the free version of the book from my website, you also get the free workbook that comes with it. And so if you go along in the book club, there I break it down into bite-sized pieces because we're all so busy. And if I just gave you the book and said, hey, sit down and read this, I mean, granted, I'll tell you, if you sat down and read it and you did none of the exercises in the moment, you'll have it done in an early afternoon easy. It's not a hard read. I mean, it's 2.5 hours. It may a lot faster if you read faster than I do. But yeah, so it really just unpacks it. It's like, hey, just read these 3 pages and do like this part of the worksheet. And in the group, then, contribute your ideas on what XYZ topic brought up for you. Because there's a lot packed in the little, in the 100-page book. But it's the whole purpose is to get you thinking.
Very nice. I love that. I love it. And I can hear your passion in all of this. So
I have really, a lot. Yes.
Yes. And that's amazing. That's what you want. You want to work with someone that has a lot of passion for what they do. So they will be able to get to the core of things and really help you. So this is an amazing resource. And she is giving that as a free gift today. You can get her free ebook version of that. And I will post that link on the podcast page so you'll be able to collect that. And definitely reach out to Vanessa and be able to work with her. I will give you her website information. And she has 2 free gifts for you today. She also has another quick reference guide on 32 home meal delivery services. I did snatch that one early on.
Yeah. And you know what? The reason why I'm not a specific like weight loss coach or anything, but all of this goes together, right? We're talking about midlife makeover. And I will tell you, one of the critical pieces of getting your life like back in order, like even to where you have the mindset where you even can get some level of confidence to change your life in a different direction, you have got to get your food situation under control.
Right.
Like I was eating out all the time. I had a really bad coffee house addiction. I mean, I was spending massive amounts of money. I was consuming massive amounts of sugar. I was, overweight. I'm probably 40 pounds less than what I was at my heaviest weight. It's a journey. It's a journey. But one of those things that was key was getting the food situation under control and getting your energy levels to where like one of my complaints was my energy cannot keep up with my ambition. I have to fix that. And so for your listeners, where they are struggling so hard because they want to do all the things, but they're like a battery and have their energy bar at a certain level. And at the end of the day, they don't have any more energy to give to following a dream. So the strategies that I've put in place and the things I have learned about my health and my medical crisis and all of these is, man, you've got to get your food situation under control. So that's why I created that quick reference guide. We hear about the big ones. They're advertised everywhere. I'm sure you see them in your Facebook feeds all the time.
Yes.
You see commercials on TV. There's famous people pretending like they're cooking in the kitchen. But there's probably 50 that I found nationwide that are competitors to these big names. But I picked the top 32 and I took 7 or 8 different comparison points. And one of the things that was important to me was pointing out if they're allergen friendly, because I'm a person who has multiple food allergies. And so if I'm going to order from a third-party company, how conscious are they of those things? So that's why, even though I'm not like specifically a food coach, that's why I put together that resource, because everybody can benefit and we're all busy. So are we really saving money going out to eat or doing any of these things? Like, no, push the easy button. Find the things in life where you can push the easy button. And I don't get paid by any of these companies. I've never talked to any of these companies. I don't get any type of kickbacks on you visiting any of these companies. It was just my research that I wanted to share with you about how to start getting this part of your life under control.
Very nice. I loved, as a matter of fact, I like I told you, I snagged that resource and I loved it. So we're getting ready to wrap up, Vanessa. And I will definitely give you all of this information for my listeners. Her Facebook group, she's got an amazing Facebook group. Her free gift, check out her page where you can go and get the free gifts, VanessaNewport.com. And I will put links for all of that there. Vanessa, one last question. What is the one actionable item that you can share with my listeners today so that they will be able to walk away from this and do something, put something in action to move them forward on being able to start just thinking about, where am I in this midlife thing, this journey?
Yeah.
And, what do I do next?
Yeah. I think the number one biggest tool that I can, or tip that I can suggest, is to take all the mental sticky notes that are in your head, because you know them, you have them. This is why we feel like things are out of control. Yeah. Oh, remember this, remember this. Oh, I want to do this someday. Oh, I have to bring brownies tomorrow for last day of school. Oh, we have a million mental sticky notes. That takes so much energy. It prevents us from being present, right? So I would say, allow yourself to sit down and start letting all of those mental sticky notes just flow out through the end of your pen or your computer fingertips, or however you want to do it. I love organizing stuff on the computer and typing, but I love writing. There's just something about writing that makes me feel like I'm actually getting it out. And so, it's kind of a process, but just first of all, get it out of your head so you can stop trying to use the energy to remember it, and then start chunking it, start organizing it. Like, this has to do with my personal responsibilities. This has to do with my dreams. This has to do with like boring responsibility stuff like taxes and insurance. And there's going to be some person who loves taxes and insurance who won't like that comment. But for me, it doesn't energize me. It's a required thing of life. Mm-hmm. But it still deserves a bucket, because we can't let those things pass, so it's like, just start organizing them, and then decide, like, okay, out of this bucket, prioritize. And maybe you have two things that are the same, and then just decide what's the next best step that I need to take toward checking that off my list or moving toward my dream.
Yes, absolutely. Very good. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And Vanessa, you talked about so much good stuff that my audience could use. I hope you consider coming back for another segment where I do talk about some things to do for self-love and self-care as we are going through this business journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it sounds like you have a lot to share from that endpoint. So I really appreciate having you, and thank you. Thank you. All right. So this concludes our session of Bye Bye 9 to 5. I will make sure that you're able to get in touch with Vanessa. And I forgot to mention, Vanessa has an amazing podcast as well. Midlife Makeover is her podcast. Look for it. And
it's Midlife Makeover Manifestors. It's the same name as my group, and I'm just making that distinction because there is another podcast called Midlife Makeover. It's a woman and a man who do that one. So,
okay, wonderful. Midlife Makeover Manifestors. Look for it. She will have, hopefully I will be on that podcast at some point.
That's the plan. I'm getting ready to launch it here in August.
Awesome. So it's going to be a new venture for her. It's going to be amazing. Look out for that, and check out VanessaNewport.com so you can stay in touch with her. And have a wonderful, super fantastic week. Bye-bye.
This episode of the Bye Bye 9 to 5 podcast has ended, but it doesn't stop there. Be sure to subscribe for more strategies and advice to help you move from employee to escapreneur, to have the kind of success you have always dreamed of without sacrificing family or time. And don't forget to rate and review us so we can continue to bring you the best content possible to motivate and encourage you on this journey. See you on the next episode.